Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this panel for Cozy Clues and Gumshoes. My name is James Gardner, a reader, reviewer, and reference librarian, and I'll be moderating this panel. In this session, we'll be talking to authors of cozy mysteries, a subgenre that places less emphasis on the violence and more emphasis on its quirky amateur detectives. Please welcome to the panel, writer for writing Brew for Chaos, Book 3 in the Enchanted Bay Mystery Series, Esme Addison.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. We also have the writer of the Great British Bump Off series. The most recent one is Kill or Be Quilt, John Allison.
Hi there, James.
Hello.
Nice to be here.
Thanks for being here today. Awesome. And we have the writer of Death on the Lanai. That's going to be the newest book in the Golden Girls Cozy Mystery series, Rachel Ekstrom Courage.
Hi, everyone. So glad to be here.
And next up is the author of the Hobtown Mystery Stories. Volume 3, Secret of the Saucer, is currently out. Very interesting series, Alexander Forbes.
Hello.
Hello, hello. And finally, The Witches of Pepperwood Bay, the writer of that series, Volume 1 is out. I'd like to welcome Lisa Manuzak Wiley.
Hello, glad to be here.
Okay. And a quick reminder that people are able to roast me should I mispronounce your names. Quick entry there. Esme, your Enchanted Bay Mystery Series takes place in the fictional, quote, town of Bellamy Bay, North Carolina. I also checked your bio and it says that you've lived in North Carolina. How much of your hometown has actually influenced this setting?
Okay, so I'm from Raleigh, which is the capital and kind of the middle of the state. The town of Bellamy Bay is based on an area that's similar to Topsail Island or Topsail Beach, which is a real place. And I lived there for a year. So it's very much like that town. However, aesthetically, it looks more like another town, which is called Little Washington or Beaufort, North Carolina. So those towns have kind of like a historical brick colonial like facade, but it's in the location of where Topsail Beach is.
Nice. Just love that small town atmosphere the book has.
Yes.
John, I read that the lead character in the Great British Bump Off series, Shauna Wickle, again, pronunciation's play,
No, correct.
actually got her start in the webcomic Bad Machinery when she was much younger, yet still showing she had a knack for discovering and solving mysteries. How do you think the character has changed and evolved as she's matured?
Well, I think it's the sort of the battle of innocence versus experience. When she was young, she just threw herself into everything and was quite tough. You know, she was from a tough background. And then as she's got older and she's learned more, she's less sure of herself. So she's lost kind of the naive kind of attitude of a very young sleuth, if you want, and it's kind of replaced by a greater sense of care and self-doubt. But I quite like playing with that. I like the idea of kind of working the old instincts off against the new instincts.
Okay, and how old is Shauna thereabouts?
I think she's 19 or 20 in the current stories, and she went from 11 to 16 in the original series of mysteries.
Oh, very nice. Yeah. Rachel, I must say that the Golden Girls seem like a unique choice for detectives. There's the great detectives from television like Columbo. Even Matlock was a detective as a lawyer, but the Golden Girls not really thought of as detectives. What made you think of doing, featuring the four ladies from Miami as detectives?
Well, I happen to think that the Golden Girls are the perfect amateur sleuths. I mean, they're always solving problems together. They all have their different skill sets. There was even an episode where they went to a murder mystery party and helped solve a murder mystery. So that DNA was always kind of in there. And I see these books as a little more akin to Murder, She Wrote than, say, Columbo. Although they do use some Columbo tactics sometimes of pretending to be a little more bumbling than they are, especially Rose. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think that if you're like the Golden Girls, but also if you like books like and TV shows like Murder She Wrote, you would probably like these books. And then also if you're a fan of anything from like the 80s and 90s, or even some of the more funny but goofy crime or thriller movies like Naked Gun or Clue, this is that kind of thing.
Hmm. I was thinking I know all of those and look forward to seeing all of them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Um,
Oh, and I just want to add one thing. There's also a lot of older sleuths in books and movies and TV. We've got Miss Marple by Agatha Christie. We've got Agatha Raisin by MC Beaton, who I used to think was old, and now I realize is not old.
that happens to a lot of pulp culture characters. When you get to a certain age, you kind of realize, wait a minute, they're only a couple years younger than me. Oh my goodness. Thank you. Alex, I've noticed you doing what Stephen King does with Castle Rock, like the various volumes of the Hobtown Mysteries include detailed descriptions of the town through maps, historical documents, making the town seem like not just a setting, but also a character. But what is Hobtown actually based on, and what towns influenced its design and history?
The town that would be the closest would be a town along the south shore of Nova Scotia called Lunenburg, and sort of the layout and kind of when I imagine myself walking around there. But it's also sort of meant to be the sort of every town of Nova Scotia. Like if a Nova Scotian who's reading the book with a fairly critical eye would probably see some geology that wouldn't quite make sense along the South Shore because it's Nova Scotia is a very diverse geological place. Like it's really quite remarkably diverse landscape. So I'd kind of pull from everywhere around the province and kind of amalgamate it into the one town of Hobtown, kind of like a Springfield or something like that.
Hmm. Interesting comparison. Springfield, yes. Lisa, you mentioned Pepperwood Bay, where witch sisters Juniper, Lily, and Clover study magic and occasionally investigate mysteries, that it was influenced in your life in Hawaii. Can you further discuss how Hawaii influenced the quote unquote magic of the place and as well as the folklore of Pepperwood Bay, and what other kinds of influences have managed to seep their way into that world?
Yeah, so I grew up in Hawaii, and Hawaii itself is pretty magical. You know, the setting, the scenery, days are filled with like sun and salty air, and how could that not be magical? And there are a lot of like real Hawaiian myths and legends, but I didn't want to steal too heavily from those because well, I just didn't want to steal from them. So I did my best to create my own little world that sort of feels like that, but is its own little thing. And so I took a lot of like cultural elements. So for example, Mr. Malasada, who's the bakery owner, a malasada is actually a pastry that's really popular in Hawaii, and it's a Portuguese pastry that's like deep fried dough rolled in sugar. So it's super yummy, and I thought that would be kind of a funny name for him. His first name is Kaipo, which is Hawaiian for sweetheart, which I thought was appropriate for a baker. His wife's name is Alana, which is a Hawaiian word for awakening or to rise up, which is also appropriate for a baker. And so, yeah, there's just like a lot of little things like that. He serves Juniper a bowl of soup, and in the book it's not mentioned, but that soup is it's called saimin. It's a specific Hawaiian noodle soup that's really popular, and so that's what he serves her. So there's a lot of little things like that. And yeah, and sort of like the sense of community that's present in the book is something that was inspired by Hawaii as well. You know, Miss Fiddleneck is their neighbor who's kind of this elderly, kooky old lady, and a little bit demanding but still lovable, and that's like every other old lady that I used to know growing up. So yeah, just kind of like that sense of like community and belonging, which is super present in Hawaii for me.
Oh, thank you. That's really good to hear about some of the influences of some of these books. It's awesome. Esme, sorry, this question ties into your first question. Cozy mysteries, often known for their quirky side characters who provide support and sometimes even comic relief to the main detective character. How many Bellamy Bay characters were influenced by characters you've encountered in North Carolina and elsewhere?
Um, I would, I can't think of, I don't really have anyone that influenced my characters. I will say that the story itself is inspired by me marrying into a first generation Polish American family. And Aunt Lydia, who is this feisty kind of sometimes mean-spirited, witchy type person, was not my mother-in-law at all. My mother-in-law was very sweet and kind and loving, but what they share in common is their love language is food, cooking and baking and making sure that everyone is well fed. So there's a lot of like Polish food in my story, and with Aunt Lydia making sure everyone is fed. Um, and so and I was also really inspired by just like the hospitality of my in-laws, and when I would visit extended family in Poland, just like the hospitality that I experienced reminds me of like Southern hospitality. So there's a lot of that that's kind of baked into the story and the series as a whole. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely the Southern hospitality. John, as someone working in the graphic novel format, you've probably seen some animation that's seemed like kind of an inspiration to you, and much of the comic is presented with images that take some liberties with reality and sometimes have the look of a classic Warner Brothers or Chuck Jones cartoon. What was your intention behind choosing that particular stylistic choice to go beyond mere word balloons and sound effects?
I should mention at this point that the book is drawn by Max Saren. Now, I kind of rough out the book. I kind of draw a bad version of the comic and then I give it to Max because I draw my own number of series, but Max is a kind of an artist I've worked with for a while. So I have the benefit of Max's additional chops to what I can do. And I would do those things anyway, but Max can do them 100 times better. An incredible Finnish artist. So yeah, I grew up with like the Warner Brothers cartoons, and they used to show triple bills of Tex Avery cartoons on TV when I was a kid, just on regular TV. You know, that you just get 25 minutes of Tex Avery. So it's a huge influence on me. That kind of modernist era, the really well painted stuff. But then you use that basis of kind of formalism, then you can go as mad as you want. And I think because Max is able to deliver kind of really, really well drawn anatomy, but at the same time, it has that European cartoony style. We can lean into both simultaneously and do anything. But it also started, I used to draw quite talky comics, and I think I still do compared to most comic books. And I would write the scripts for Max on my previous series that we worked together on, Giant Days. And I thought, I don't want this to be boring for Max. I don't want it just to be talking heads. So I'd try and make things, I'd push things. And that's kind of where this kind of synergy of us working this way kind of it bled back into my work as well. Just go as crazy as we can because it's fun, because drawing's hard and it takes a long time.
Yeah, that's that's one of the great things about the graphic format is kind of blending in with pictures and words. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Enjoyed that. Rachel, I've assumed you've watched some of the Golden Girls. It's been on for 7 seasons, built up quite a community between the four characters, five if you count the St. Olaf stories as their own character. Please tell us about writing in a world that's already been well established and what kind of research you had to do to be able to write about the Golden Girls.
Absolutely. It is a well-established world because not only was it on for 7 seasons, it's been on reruns and streaming. It's the 40th anniversary. So the show has been around for 40 years and I have the show on constantly. So I'm definitely absorbing and immersing it a lot. When I was writing the first one, Murder by Cheesecake, I did get to visit Miami because I am based in Pittsburgh, which is a little different setting. And I ate a lot of cheesecake as well as part of my intensive research process. For the one that's coming, I don't have galleys yet, but it looks like this, Death on the Lanai. This one, I did a lot of online research because I based the mansion in this book on the Vizcaya Museums and Gardens, which is just this gorgeous home in Miami, and you can take an amazing virtual tour of it if you're curious. There's also a book by Jim Colucci called Golden Girls Forever, which I really enjoy paging through. So it's a mix of online, in person, and just watching the show a million times. And honestly, these characters are extremely well established. I think even if you don't watch the show all the time, you know all the different archetypes of Rose, Dorothy, Sophia, and Blanche. You know which is which. And so for me, it was really important to get their voices right. And their characters right. And so, we're not getting any new episodes of the show. There's not going to be a reboot. But if you want some more adventures with the girls, there's Death on the Lanai coming and there's Murder by Cheesecake.
Mm. Yeah, it's the greatest kind of research where it involves like Miami and cheesecake.
Exactly,
Very
exactly.
nice.
So I was pretty lucky to get to do that. And there's a recipe in the back of Murder by Cheesecake that I developed with my mom, which is pretty delicious and easy to make. And I think there will be a recipe in the back of Death on the Lanai. So stay tuned on that one.
Oh, I will definitely stay tuned because I am a fan of cheesecake.
Oh, good.
Alex, I'm sure you agree that Hobtown's lucky enough and fortunate enough to have a mystery club composed of smart, capable teenagers that are dedicated to investigating all of the town's mysteries, which seem to be a lot. Groups of young people solving mysteries is a time-honored trope in mystery stories, but what does each member of the mystery club bring to the whole?
Uh, yeah, I don't have like slides to put. I don't know how to do that, so I just have the book here so I can show you. Uh, that's that guy's Sam, and he's sort of our fish out of water. He's the American who kind of comes into Nova Scotia into this weird little town. And a lot of the first mystery is sort of centered around him trying to find his missing father. He is there's an old Stratmeyer Syndicate book, like the same publisher as Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys and all that, called Tom Swift, who was like a young inventor. And Sam Finch is our Tom Swift. So he's like a little engineer, kind of a super genius, but he is very socially stunted. He's not very good at relationships. So a lot of it is him figuring that out. This is Dana, and she's I think another one of your questions mentions this, but she's kind of inspired by Nancy Drew. She's like, on the surface, perfect. But we kind of question, what that would actually mean for somebody. But she is sort of like the lead sleuth, the leader of the group. Then we have Pauline. Pauline is my favorite character, I would say. She's very spacey and very funny, and she can kind of see into the future, and it gives her stomach aches when she does so. This is Denny. He is yeah, these are like kind of our brothers. They're kind of like jockey guys, but he's really affable and he's sort of the most socially sensitive of the group. He kind of keeps them all together, very aware of what's going on with each person and sort of the interpersonal dynamics, and in his own way is really good at kind of keeping everything fun for everybody. and that's his brother Denny, or sorry, Brennan, who is a lot quieter and reserved than Denny, and he's sort of I would say the most morally aligned towards doing good in the group, and sort of the most kind of pro-social and thoughtful guy. And he's also very strong. Yeah, that's the team.
Well, it was awesome that you managed to find a page with all 5 of them on there too. That was great.
Yeah, that was lucky.
Yes. Lisa, think the dynamic between the 3 sisters is really what makes this book so interesting, such an enjoyable read. What kind of experiences as a sibling, cousin, friend, etc., influenced how you portrayed the sisters' relationship with each other?
Definitely my relationship with my 2 sisters. Each of the witches was inspired by one of us, and kind of like an exaggerated version of our different personalities, especially our younger personalities. I'm the middle child, like Lily, so I'm kind of the peacekeeper, the quiet one. Um, my older sister is a research scientist and a microbiologist, and so she inspired Juniper, who has an affinity for like potions and the kind of more technical, sciencey side of magic. And she's also like very much like the responsible leader and like, I'm in charge and you guys have to follow the rules. And Clover is based on my younger sister, who was a tomboy growing up. She was full of energy, always outside in nature, catching lizards, and was friendly to everyone. So yeah, Clover is very much that sort of like exuberant personality. And so since I based the witches on my own experiences, my own relationship with my sisters, it was pretty easy to like put them into different situations where I could understand and like surmise what they would do, how they would act. Like Clover getting excited to visit mermaids and Juniper being like, no, that's both too risky and too gross. I don't want to do that. And yeah, and what's funny is that my 9-year-old nephew was reading the book, and he's the son of my younger sister, Clover, who inspired Clover. And we asked him who he thinks which of the witches is, based on his mom. And after reading the descriptions in the back of the book, he thought that she was most like Juniper, who was like the most responsible rule follower. And I think that was kind of funny because his perspective of her is like of the mom and like the, setting the rules and everything. And so yeah, I just thought that was kind of funny that from different perspectives, people could have different personalities. So yeah.
Okay. And are your sisters aware that they found their way into literature?
Oh yeah, they're very proud. Yeah, they tell everyone.
Awesome. Esme, I liked how Bellamy Bay could be sort of a microcosm for the world, including, well, maybe not for our world, but there are magicals in Bellamy Bay, and those are people with magical powers and who also happen to be descended from mythical creatures like mermaids and dragons, living among non-magical people. Lead character Alexandra, along with her aunts and cousins, are water witches related to mermaids. It gives them healing abilities. How does being magicals or non-magicals affect the characters in this town?
Okay. So, just to give a little context, this series is inspired by the myth of the Mermaid of Warsaw. So it's a very popular mermaid myth in Poland, and I kind of envision this family is descended from this mermaid. She was a real person, not a myth at all. And so they have a mermaid gene. They've lost the ability to shift into their mer form. So they have a mermaid gene, which gives them water-based powers and healing, and they're also telepathic. And they own an enchanted apothecary at the beach. So there's potions and all those types of things. And I try, even though I'm working in this really kind of, fantastical world, the town is very, as the kids say, based. It's very, it's very realistic. It's just like everything is just like our world right now, but there are hints of magic in it. And they're the mundanes are the people that basically aren't magical, and they don't know that there are magicals amongst them. And the difference, there really is no difference in how I kind of create the characters. They all have like different concerns, like ethical concerns. Like there are magicals that think who are like really leaning into their powers and love being able to do things that others can't. And but there's others that say, you know, that kind of question the idea, like the ethics of having these abilities to use compulsion as a, you know, as a voice, or to intrude in people's thoughts and read their minds, and like, should we do this because we have the ability? So, you know, they kind of are warring with these ethical issues. You know, all this is happening in a small cozy town, and there's like a murder that happens every book. But I really want to show that these are just like everyday people, except some people have magical abilities and some don't, but they still have kind of are warring with the same types of issues.
Yeah, it's like I really appreciated that layer of added drama, you know, like apart from the mystery, there's kind of these interactions, you know, and like you said, the ethics of, you know, should we use our powers in this way? So really
Yeah.
enjoyed that.
Thank you.
John, going back to Bad Machinery for a moment. The book mentions Shauna's friends, Charlotte, Claire, and Mildred. They show up in the book, but they seemingly don't have a lot of large roles in Kill or Be Quilt. As this is a story centered on Shauna, will we see the friends more in the book, or like some adult friendships, will they steadily drift apart?
Well, I'm blessed, James, with a very wide comics universe based on 25 years of work. So all these characters occur elsewhere. Charlotte has her own series, Solver, that kind of has run in books and runs online as a webcomic, kind of ongoing, and is then collected. They all pop up. They can all go in each other's. It's a cinematic universe, you know, without any cinema, obviously. So yes, they can reappear. Shauna appears in the other series as well. I just wanted to show that Shauna has friends and that she isn't just a, you know, a lonely person on a canal boat, because I felt when I was writing it that it would feel like kind of a lonely story if you felt that she was completely on her own. I wanted people to know that she was well liked, and her friends aren't in the previous book in the series. I thought they exist, they can show up, and it felt good. And it's a little thing for readers who know my previous series. It's nice that part of the whole cozy ethos really is feeling good and kind of feeling warm when you read something. And I think seeing the old friends, even in their little cameos in this book, was kind of important to kind of keep that cozy crime feeling going.
It was definitely cozy, kind of seeing her interacting with these friends. You know, you could tell that it was a really deep bond.
Yeah, I'm just lucky. I have to say, I've had the benefit of hundreds and hundreds of pages with those characters together, and they know each other so well. They kind of write themselves, and I can hear their voices in my head as soon as they're on panel in whatever combination. I know what their dynamics are, so it's nice to be able to play that out even in kind of microcosm, if you like.
Oh, yeah. Rachel, with this program being about cozy mysteries or a work of crime fiction characterized by a lack of explicit violence or sex and often featuring amateur detectives, when you wrote Murder by Cheesecake, did you intend for it to be a cozy mystery? And what aspects of the book do you feel help make it a cozy mystery, especially since, to piggyback off John mentioning that it was a cozy mysteries branding?
Yeah.
But what makes a cozy mystery?
So cozy mysteries, they often don't have on screen or on the page, you know, sex or violence, anything too gruesome or gory. They often have an amateur sleuth. So I would definitely say Murder by Cheesecake and Death on the Lanai are cozy in two senses. One is I try to stay somewhat within the parameters of the cozy mystery genre. Um, in Death on the Lanai, for example, we're kind of approaching a locked room mystery, and there isn't, you know, too much of that, you know, explicit stuff or any of it on the page. It's also, both these books are also cozy in another way, just like watching The Golden Girls is cozy. It gives you that warm, comforting feeling, just like when you hear that theme song playing and you just kind of relax and time travel in your mind to the 80s and 90s, where it seems like things were maybe a little simpler then and you could solve any problem, you know, over some cheesecake at the kitchen table. So I always try to have scenes where the girls are having some cheesecake or they're hanging out on that iconic and comfy looking coral rattan couch, or they're in their pajamas and robes. And so I just try to put in those cozy, warm and fuzzy details that are like also, you know, actually cozy, because the show is so nostalgic for so many people, and it does give people that warm and comforting feeling. So I try to build in those scenes. And then Murder by Cheesecake kind of introduced the girls to the crime solving world, and then Death on the Lanai, they're solving a slightly more complex mystery. They're finding their footing a little more as sleuths. So there is more of that clue finding aspect, for all four of them. And so, yeah, so I'm trying to make it cozy in both senses of the word.
Okay. Definitely felt cozy as someone who's actually, was old enough to watch The Golden Girls when it premiered. So really appreciated the trip down memory lane there.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
No, picture it, Sicily, 19, forget the exact number. But it was,
No, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
yeah. Um, Alex, speaking of nostalgia, while this story takes place in the 90s, it seems to owe a lot to both the timeless Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew series. What kind of influence did those young detectives have on this world, and what other influences made their way into the Hobtown mysteries?
Um, I just thought in my head, we don't know them nothing. No, it's mostly sort of the aura of those books that I was interested in, like you'd see them when you were a kid, and they just had a real just a vibe about them, like the covers were always so good and spooky, and then like the illustrations on the inside were always really interesting too. I never read them when I was a kid. When we started the series, I was like, oh, I should probably read them. Um, and they were pretty bad. Like they weren't like the characters were like pretty flat, I found. I think they're very much meant to be these kind of vessel characters that a kid reading it could very easily insert themselves into. So it was kind of a fun project of taking one of those books and making them into what we wanted them to be, which was like as spooky as the cover indicates, and all pictures, no, so yeah, that's what was fun about it. And it was fun to actually kind of, I don't know, breathe a little bit more personality into those characters. And kind of like I mentioned before, like with Nancy Drew, I mean, the way it describes her in the first book, it describes her almost like she's Batman or it's something, like she's perfect, you know what I mean? And it's like, what is somebody like who's actually perfect? You know what I mean? So she has a little bit of like solipsism going on, which is kind of interesting, and the same with like the Hardy Boys, who are those kids? And like what is a brotherly relationship actually like? What is it like to have siblings? Chris, the writer, has an older brother. So I think he was able to explore a lot of that through them. So yeah, I would say, to answer your question, I don't know if that answers your question. Like the aesthetics of those books are probably what we're mostly going off of. But yeah.
As someone who works in a library and who has seen a lot of covers of the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew books, like especially, looking at the book and at the artwork, it was like first thing that popped into my mind. So it was
Nice.
really nice to see kind of that kind of take on the story, and especially taken in directions that I doubt the writers of either of those genres would have even thought of. So really enjoyed it.
Thanks very much.
Lisa, while the Witches of Pepperwood Bay does have a mystery that needs solving, and it's often characterized as a fantasy, just checking around like Amazon and such. Were you intending to write this book as simply a fantasy, or is the mystery genre an inherent part of the story?
Um, I didn't set out to write a mystery, so it kind of just happened. The main job of the witches is to help the villagers with their problems using magic and their unique talents. And in this particular case, there's a missing teapot that's very important. So it wasn't intentional, but it did help to introduce readers to the world little by little by going to ask different people, like, oh, have you seen this? And what do you know about this? And also showing the relationship between the sisters because they have different ideas of how they should go about solving this mystery. So yeah, it just happened to work out that way. And I think through the nature of them being problem solvers, there's probably a lot of mysteries that they need to solve throughout their lives. So yeah.
Yeah, it's just one of the things I really enjoyed about it. Just the I'm solving mysteries, and it's just a teapot mystery, It's not
Yeah.
like just something quiet. That's very
Yeah.
cozy, a teapot. Esme, one of the overarching mysteries in your series is what happened to Alexandra's mother, who's also a water witch. How does the ongoing mystery affect Alexandra? How likely is she to get any sort of closure? Feel free not to disclose any spoilers also.
Okay. I will say that that is something that will be addressed in the series. That's all I can say. But it has deeply impacted her. In the first book, she doesn't know anything about her mother's side of the family because she died when she was little, and her father kind of holds her mother's side of the family responsible, feels like there's something like they're kind of eccentric. He never tells her that they have magical powers, but she discovers that when she's in New York at the beginning of the series, and she goes down there and she reconnects with them. She used to spend summers there, and she for reasons forgot that she had magical powers, but she didn't know it as a child, and that's all explored in the book. But it's just kind of a looming issue that she is motherless and she doesn't really know what happened, and so it's just one of those. Throughout the first two books, it's just kind of like in the back of her mind, and it comes up occasionally. By the third book, which is the most recent, A Brew for Chaos, it's something that's really present on her mind because she's looking into a case, kind of like a serial killer of women, and it's making her think about her own mother and what happened to her. So it's by the third book, it's a very prescient issue for her. And so we'll see what happens, but
Okay.
yeah.
That's again one of those other layers on there. Really enjoyed that. Just it's not cozy, but still enjoyed it.
Well, there's a lot of coffee and tea drinking, and I will say that the third book kind of pushes the envelope with the coziness. Um,
Okay.
because it's very it's not high fantasy. There's a lot of magical realism and fantasy, but got a little hint of sci-fi in this third one, and there's a little bit of a government conspiracy as
Ooh,
well.
yeah.
But it's all happening in this little cozy small town. And I have to say my inspiration, some of my favorite shows are like there's a show called Eureka, which I really love, which is like this cozy small town, and there's like military government contractors, and they're doing weird stuff, and there's eccentric characters. So that was actually inspiration for this book, for the series. And then shows like Charmed. Again, you've got a trio. We've got Alex and her two cousins. So you've got these three powerful women, powerful in their own ways, but very deeply committed to being like a strong family network. But there's lots of magic, and there's always like magical fight scenes and things like that. But it always comes back to like the cozy small town and the family.
Nice. John, we mentioned that mystery stories often pay homage to some of the great detectives of the past, kind of like with, we talked about Columbo. And where does Shauna Wickle rank among fictional detectives like, say, Miss Marple, Sherlock Holmes, or Hercule Poirot?
Well, I think about where she fits into the kind of hierarchy of detectives, and she's kind of 50% Veronica Mars in the sense she's kind of almost like the kind of flatfoot PI just sticking their nose in, and she's also like Jessica Fletcher, where she's kind of she's part of the community, and she's able to use her kind of insertion into the community to kind of parlay certain relationships, and she has to form them all in both the books in this series. She kind of has to, but she's very winning, so people just like her. So she's got a little bit of the toughness of Veronica Mars, that kind of detective, but also she's got the kind of winning nature of Jessica Fletcher, where she can just stick her nose in anywhere and she's not going to be dissuaded from sticking her nose. And she is a classic sticky beak. So I think that would be where I think she fits in really to the great young and more mature lady detectives.
All right. Thank you for giving me the expression sticky beak. I will try to use that more in conversation. Rachel, this book, as well as the next book in the series, Death on the Lanai, establishes the four ladies as amateur detectives. But out of Blanche, Dorothy, Sophia, and Rose, which lady is the best detective and why?
Okay, so the easy answer is that Dorothy is the best one because she's really analytical and smart. She's incredibly well read. And so she's read all the great crime novels. And there are times when, during the course of these mysteries, she may even think back to one of the books she's read and figure when she's trying to figure something out, like, well, how did Marlowe do it? How did so and so do it? But honestly, I think all of the ladies bring something really important to the table for crime solving. I mean, Blanche has got her feminine wiles, which can be used to great effect when you need to create a diversion or get close to someone. Rose, I also think, she is not as dumb as she looks. I think Rose is observant and a good judge of character in a lot of ways, and a lot does not get past Sophia, and she tells it like it is. So I think they all bring something to the table. I think their superpower also is the four of them working together. Their deep friendship, and four heads are better than one, right? So you have kind of this, Avengers group of different women with different skill sets and personalities. But I mean, Dorothy definitely has that kind of most likely to be a detective vibe, I think. And then the first book, Murder by Cheesecake, it was Dorothy and Rose. The story kind of centered on them. The books are all written in third person, but it kind of centered on Dorothy and Rose. In Death on the Lanai, the next one, it's going to focus on Dorothy and Blanche. So we're going to get a lot more of Blanche in Death on the Lanai.
Oh yeah, like to see that dynamic of Dorothy and Blanche.
Yeah.
Oh, Alex, possible crossover opportunity with the Golden Girls notwithstanding. Hobtown mysteries are full of supernatural strangeness and some creepy moments like Pauline's visions that kind of take some of the cozy out of the mystery. What kind of discussions occurred between you and your co-creator involving boundaries being pushed?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard really of the term cozy mystery until this panel. And I'm kind of learning about it, surprised that I'm here, because these books can get pretty not cozy. But they are also cozy. I mean, where we live is it's a cozy little region, kind of a folk region. And sort of the coziness that I think, have the most in there is this sort of endearing relationships between the characters, the endearing nature of the people in the town. There's a lot of love there, and a lot of silliness and humor. One thing that we play with in a few different ways in the series, I do it visually with art going between different points, and Chris does it through the story, is dealing with contrast. And I would say that one of the major contrasts is a sort of coziness, contrasting with some very disturbing stuff that the kids find. And I guess a lot of what the series is about is the kids kind of uncovering literally what's under the town, but also figuratively what's kind of under the town in terms of its history, kind of coming to terms with sort of the colonial past of the town and the consequences of that and what actually would have happened throughout history. And they kind of have to leave their cozy little life in order to really figure this stuff out, which they're just so they can't help but to try to do. So I guess sort of I don't know if there's many conversations with me and Chris about this necessarily, but that's just sort of written right into the theme of the book, and sort of the nature of the books is that dichotomy between coziness and what's the opposite of coziness?
Non-coziness, like
non-coziness.
a rough blanket as opposed to a soft one.
Yes, yeah, a rough blanket.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I chose this picture, because your book was very creepy, and it was like I was feeling, oh, this isn't very cozy at all, but still enjoyable. Thank you. Lisa, you mentioned your book is listed as specifically written for like a middle grade audience, and the girls search for a missing teapot. Sounds like a story where nothing too terrible happens. How do you specifically write for your audience compared to writing for younger children or adults?
So for this book, basically, I just tune into that part of me that is a little girl that just wants to do magic and live in a magical world. And so, yeah, I'm being really self-indulgent and writing a book that I would have wanted to read as a kid. And yeah, I don't want to write anything too scary because I myself am kind of a weenie. I didn't want to make anything that was like, keep you up at night. And I still wanted to give the world a comforting atmosphere, even if the characters are doing something a little bit dangerous, like fighting a kraken or something. And that's a good example of something in other media is pretty terrifying as a kraken. It's monstrous, nightmare-inducing. But in Pepperwood Bay, it's toned down a lot. I gave it some pretty iridescent colors to kind of soften it a little bit. So making things like scary things a little bit more palatable or turning something dark on its head to make it fun or funny makes it a little bit easier for kids to consume. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you very much for we're kind of getting close to the wire here, but I would just want to say thank you very much for giving me basically the opportunity to read this book. So you guys have added to my TBR pile. You've also made me want to eat some cheesecake, find a soft blanket, perhaps even drink some coffee with two hands. You can hold it with two hands for maximum coziness. Um, but I think it's probably a good idea we wrap up the panel. But thank you all very much for joining us. Thank you to the speakers. Thank you to everyone who joined in on this session. And we hope that you've add something to your TBR. And next we have an author spotlight with Jared Dapier. So tune into that. Thank you. I say thank you a lot, but I'm just like, I really enjoyed reading these books, kind of a change from what I'm used to. So really appreciate it. And keep calm, carry on, and stay cozy, everyone.
Mhm.